The sterile white walls of the airport arrivals hall blurred before my eyes, not from fatigue, but from a sudden sharp clarity. It was 8 p.m. My flight had landed an hour ago. My phone, clutched in my trembling hand, showed a dozen missed calls from me to them, and 0 from them to me. The last text message I sent, an hour before landing, asking if they were on their way, remained unread. My children Mark and Lisa had promised. They had sworn on everything they held dear, which apparently wasn't much, that they would be here. I had just returned from a brutal week in a specialized clinic across the country. It wasn't a vacation. It was a medical necessity, a series of painful procedures I'd put off for years, the kind that left you drained, raw, and desperate for the comfort of home. I had explicitly told them the flight number, the time, the terminal. I had even sent them a calendar invite. "Mum, don't worry," Mark had said, his voice smooth and reassuring. "We'll be there. You just focus on getting better." Lisa had chimed in, "Of course, Mum. We'd never leave you stranded." Those words echoed in the vast, empty space around me, mocking me. Stranded. That was exactly what I was. My legs ached, my head throbbed, and a chill, deeper than the air conditioning, began to spread through my chest. This wasn't just a missed pickup. This was a statement. A loud, clear declaration of how little I mattered. I tried calling Mark again. It went straight to voicemail. Then Lisa. Same result. My heart, which I thought was already shattered from years of quiet disappointments, seemed to crack open further. Pain wasn't just in my body anymore. It was an icy grip around my soul. I pictured them probably at home, oblivious, or worse, deliberately ignoring my calls. Were they even thinking about me? Were they even aware I was supposed to be landing? A horrifying thought surfaced. Maybe they actually forgot. Not just a little slip-up, but a complete erasure of my existence from their minds. Taxi pulled up to the curb, its yellow light reflecting in the puddles on the tarmac. I had to make a decision. Did I call an Uber? Did I call a friend? Or did I stand here waiting for a call that would never come? A presence that would never appear? The humiliation burned. I, Sarah, the woman who had spent her entire adult life bending over backwards for her children, was being treated like an afterthought. Less than an afterthought, like something completely forgettable. My mind raced back through the years. The countless times I'd bailed them out. The rent payments, the car repairs, the sudden emergencies that always seemed to involve a need for cash. Mark, always between jobs, perpetually needing a little boost to get on his feet. Lisa, with her grand ideas that never quite materialized, always needing a temporary loan for her next big venture. I had justified it to myself every single time. They were my children. They needed me. This was what mothers did. They sacrificed. They gave. But what did I get in return? Late-night calls only when they needed something. Half-hearted birthday wishes. Excuses. Always excuses for why they couldn't visit, couldn't help, couldn't just be there for me. The airport was just the latest, the most public, and perhaps the most painful example. It was the final straw. It wasn't just about the ride home. It was about respect. It was about love. It was about being seen, truly seen, by the people who were supposed to cherish you most. Taxi driver leaned out his window, his face a mixture of concern and impatience. "Ma'am, you need a ride?" I nodded, my throat tight. "Yes, please." I gave him my address. The short ride home felt like a journey to a different universe, one where I was no longer the endlessly giving mother, but a woman finally ready to take a stand. As the taxi pulled into my driveway, the familiar silhouette of their house across the street was dark. They weren't home. Or they were, and they were deliberately ignoring me. The thought filled me with a cold, righteous fury. My hands, still shaking, fumbled with my keys. I walked into my quiet, empty house. The silence screamed. I sat down at my kitchen table, the exhaustion finally catching up to me. But my mind was clearer than it had been in years. A singular, radical thought formed, solidifying with every beat of my aching heart. They had forgotten me at the airport. They had forgotten their own mother, fresh from a medical procedure in a strange city. Fine. Two could play that game. I opened my laptop, my fingers flying across the keyboard. Their rent was due on the 1st of the month, which was tomorrow. For years I had transferred the money without fail, sometimes even paying it a few days early to ensure they wouldn't be late. It was a substantial amount, enough to cover their comfortable 3-bedroom house, the place I had helped them secure when they couldn't get a loan. This wasn't some small apartment. This was a significant chunk of my retirement savings every single month. My cursor hovered over the confirm transfer button. My finger trembled, but this time it was with a different kind of tremor. Not fear, not pain, but a fierce protective determination. I closed the banking window. Then with a click, I went to my calendar and deleted the recurring transfer. I disabled the direct debit authorization. I severed the digital lifeline. Let them forget me. I would forget their rent. And I wouldn't just forget it this month. I would forget it forever. The decision, though born of immense pain, brought a strange, bitter sense of peace. This was it. The line had been drawn. The game had changed. They had no idea what was coming. The shocking part wasn't just that I was doing it, but that it felt so right, so overdue. For once, I was choosing me, and the world was about to find out what that meant. The next morning, the sun streamed through my kitchen window, but it felt cold. The initial surge of defiant energy from last night had subsided, replaced by a hollow ache. I thought about the first time I truly realized how deep I was in this hole. Mark was 22, freshly dropped out of college for the 3rd time, and suddenly needed a place to stay. Not with me, of course, that wasn't cool. He needed his own apartment. I remember him sitting on my couch, looking earnest and a little lost, promising this was just temporary, just until he got his act together. He'd pay me back every dime. He'd said he was going to get a good job, really apply himself. I believed him. Or maybe I just wanted to believe him so badly. I helped him with a security deposit, then the first month's rent, then the second and the third. It never stopped. It became a pattern. A desperate cycle of dependency that I, in my misguided love, had fostered. Mark's temporary apartment turned into a string of apartments, each one slightly more expensive, each one requiring my financial intervention. He always had a reason, a new business idea that needed seed money, an unexpected car repair, a sudden medical bill that wasn't covered. He'd frame it as an emergency, and I, the ever-anxious mother, would swoop in. I saw his potential, or what I wanted to be his potential, and truly believed if I just gave him enough breathing room, enough financial stability, he would eventually thrive. I wanted him to succeed more than anything. I wanted him to be happy. Lisa was different. She wasn't as overtly demanding as Mark, but her needs were perhaps more insidious. She was the one who needed help with her creative projects. A photography course she couldn't afford, a small business venture selling handmade jewelry that never quite took off, a down payment on a new car that she absolutely needed for networking. She'd always present her requests with a sweet, almost apologetic tone, emphasizing how much she appreciated my support. Lisa was the master of making me feel like I was investing in her dreams, making me feel like an essential part of her success story. When her projects failed, as they always did, she'd express profound disappointment, sometimes even tears, making me feel bad for even considering stopping my support. I had been a single mother for most of their lives. Their father had left when they were very young, and I'd worked 2 jobs for years to give them everything I never had. I wanted them to have an easier life, to avoid the struggles I faced. Maybe that was where it all started, that deep-seated need to protect them from hardship. I built my career from the ground up, sacrificing my own comforts, my own desires, saving diligently for my retirement. But as they grew older, my savings account became their emergency fund, their lifestyle fund, their just because fund. The house they lived in now, the one I just decided to stop paying for, was the culmination of years of their escalating demand. Mark and his girlfriend Sarah, different Sarah, was struggling with rent at their old place. And Lisa, perpetually restless, was looking for a new opportunity in a new part of town. They had somehow decided together that a 3-bedroom house would be perfect. Perfect for them. Never mind that it was far beyond what they could afford on their own. "Mom, it's an investment," Mark had said with his usual persuasive charm. "We can split the costs, and you can help with the down payment. It'll appreciate, you'll get your money back," Lisa had added. "And we'll finally have space for you to visit, Mom. A guest room just for you." I should have seen through it. I should have recognized the thinly veiled manipulation. But the idea of them having a stable, beautiful home, the idea of having a dedicated guest room, a place where I truly belonged, was too tempting. I used a significant portion of my retirement savings for the down payment and agreed to cover a large portion of the monthly rent, effectively making me the primary financier for their luxurious lifestyle. They decorated it beautifully, shared photos with me, and occasionally invited me over for a superficial dinner. The guest room, however, remained mostly empty, gathering dust. My visits were usually brief, and I always felt like an outsider looking in, an ATM with a pulse. I convinced myself it was love. It was love to provide for my children. It was love to ensure their comfort. It was love to shield them from the harsh realities of financial struggle. But looking back, it wasn't love. Not entirely. It was a desperate attempt to buy their affection, their presence, their time. It was a misguided effort to feel needed, to feel like a central part of their lives, because deep down, I was terrified of being alone. I feared if I stopped giving, they would stop caring. They would disappear. And standing alone in that airport, abandoned, I realized my deepest fear had already come true, despite all my gifts. My money hadn't bought me their love. It had merely facilitated their indifference. And that, I realized with a fresh wave of grief, was the most heartbreaking part of all. The first call came that afternoon, just as I was trying to distract myself with some gardening. It was Mark. His voice, usually so casual, held a slight edge of confusion. "Hey Mom, just checking in. Everything okay with the rent for the house?" I paused, wiping dirt from my hands. "Everything's fine, Mark. Why do you ask?" "Well, the landlord sent a notice. Said the payment bounced, or, well, that it wasn't received. Figured there must be some kind of glitch with the bank or something. You usually send it a day early." I took a deep breath. "No glitch, Mark. I didn't send it." A beat of silence. Then his tone shifted from confusion to something colder. "What do you mean you didn't send it? Mom, it's due today. It's the 1st of the month." "I know when it's due, Mark." My voice was steady, surprising even myself. "I just decided not to pay it this month." "Not pay it? What are you talking about?" "Mom, we live here. We need that money for rent." Casual plea had morphed into irritation, then outright anger. His voice was rising. "This isn't a game, Mom. This is our home." "Yes, it is your home. I said, a bitter taste in my mouth. And homes come with responsibilities, like paying for them. But you always pay. You agreed to help us with this. What's going on? Is something wrong? Are you sick again? The faint concern was almost laughable, given his absence at the airport. He was only concerned about my financial health, not my actual health. Nothing's wrong that hasn't been wrong for years, Mark, I replied, my voice gaining strength. You want to know what's going on? I spent a week undergoing painful medical procedures, flew halfway across the country, landed exhausted and hurting, and was left stranded at the airport for over an hour, because neither you nor Lisa bothered to show up, or even answer your phones. Another silence, this one longer. Then a stuttering, Mum, come on, we had a little mix-up. It was an honest mistake. We got the times confused. Lisa thought I was picking you up. I thought Lisa was. The classic blame game. No accountability. A mix-up? I scoffed. You both ignored my calls. You didn't even check to see if I made it home. I had to take a taxi. Well, you made it home, didn't you? See, no harm done. We were busy. Look, this is ridiculous. You can't just not pay our rent because of a misunderstanding. We'll get an eviction notice. We'll be on the street. His voice was now full of panic, the underlying entitlement shining through. You are grown adults, Mark. You figure it out. You found the house. You figure out how to pay for it. I am no longer funding your lifestyle. I ended the call before he could launch into another tirade. My hand trembled as I hung up, but the resolve held firm. Minutes later, Lisa called. Her approach was different, more emotionally manipulative. Mom, what is going on? Mark just called me, completely hysterical. He said you are not paying the rent. Is this true? You are going to make us homeless? How could you do this to us? Her voice was laced with hurt, sounding as if I had personally attacked her. Lisa, don't play the victim. You both know exactly why I am doing this. You left me at the airport. Oh, Mom. That was just a silly oversight. We were so sorry. It completely slipped our minds. You know how busy we are. It was a crazy day. We feel terrible about it, really, truly. But to punish us like this? To take away our home? That's just cruel, Mom. That's not like you. Cruel? My voice cracked with suppressed emotion. What's cruel, Lisa, is spending years giving and sacrificing, pouring my life savings into your comfort, only to be completely forgotten and ignored when I am at my most vulnerable. What's cruel is you both acting like I am an endless ATM, never appreciating anything, never lifting a finger for me, unless it benefits you. That's not fair, Mom. We love you. We always tell you how much we appreciate you. Her voice was rising, a desperate fake sincerity. We just had a lot on our plates. You expect too much. I expect respect, Lisa, and a basic level of care, and neither of you has shown me that in a very long time. You want to know what's not fair? It's not fair that I am funding the lives of two able-bodied adults who can't even be bothered to pick their ailing mother up from the airport. That ends now. The rent is not being paid. You need to find a way to cover it. But Mom, we don't have that kind of money. You know that. You are literally going to throw us out on the street. That's your problem, Lisa, not mine. You figure it out. Just like I had to figure out how to get home from the airport by myself. I hung up, my heart pounding. The raw emotion in her voice, even if it was feigned, was hard to bear. But I couldn't back down, not this time. The phone rang again immediately. It was Mark. I let it go to voicemail. Then Lisa. I let that go to voicemail too. My hands were still shaking, but a strange sense of liberation was beginning to bloom in my chest. The fight had begun. Calls continued throughout the day, a relentless barrage of anger, pleading and thinly veiled threats. Mark's voicemails were full of escalating demands and accusations, while Lisa's were tearful and guilt-tripping. Listening to them, my resolve only hardened. They weren't sorry for what they did. They were only sorry about the consequences. I walked through my house, each step a testament to years of quiet sacrifice. Every piece of furniture, every carefully chosen decoration represented a choice I made for their benefit, or at least the illusion of their benefit. I remember the year I wanted to replace my ancient sputtering car. I had saved up, done my research, and was ready to finally treat myself to something reliable. Then Mark unexpectedly lost his job, and Lisa needed money for a once-in-a-lifetime business opportunity. My car fund became their emergency fund. I drove that clunker for another 3 years, constantly worried it would break down on the highway. They never once offered to help with its eventual replacement. Then there was my birthday last year. I turned 60, a milestone. I had casually mentioned weeks in advance that I'd love to have a simple dinner with them, maybe just the 3 of us. No fuss, just connection. Mark said he'd check his schedule. Lisa was super busy with a new project. On the day, I got a text from Mark. "Happy B-Day, Mom. Hope it's a good one." And from Lisa, "HBD. Mama. Wish I could be there, but deadline from hell. Sending love." No call, no visit, not even a card. I spent my 60th birthday alone, eating a microwave dinner. It stung deeply. It wasn't the gift I wanted. It was their presence, their recognition. And Christmas. Always a production. I'd spend weeks carefully selecting thoughtful gifts for them, their partners, and eventually Lisa's 2 children. I'd spend hours wrapping, baking, driving across town to deliver them. On Christmas morning, I'd get a perfunctory thank you text, maybe a quick video call if they remembered. Their gifts to me? Often last minute, impersonal, or sometimes non-existent. One year, Mark handed me a crumpled gift card to a coffee shop. "Forgot to wrap it," he'd mumbled. Another year, Lisa gave me a half-empty bottle of lotion she clearly had lying around. It wasn't about the monetary value. It was about the utter lack of thought, the complete disregard for me as an individual. It felt like an obligation they begrudgingly fulfilled. The breaking point before the airport had been a few months ago. I had a minor fall at home. Nothing serious, thankfully, but it left me shaken and with a nasty sprain. I called Mark first. "Mom, I'm really sorry, but I am swamped with this new gig. Can't really step away." I called Lisa. "Oh no, Mom, are you okay? I am so sad to hear that. I am actually out of town this weekend for a retreat. But call a neighbor or an ambulance if it's really bad." Not a single offer to come over to check on me, to bring me food, to help me get to the doctor. My neighbor, bless her heart, was the one who drove me to urgent care. These weren't isolated incidents. These were chapters in a long, ongoing story. A story where I was the reliable, ever-present safety net, and they were the entitled recipients. I had become their bank, their free therapist, their emergency contact, but never truly their mother in the reciprocal sense. I was there to solve problems, not to share life with. The worst part was how they normalized it. They truly seemed to believe this was the natural order of things, that it was my duty, my obligation, to ensure their lives ran smoothly, regardless of my own needs or feeling. They had grown up with me constantly sacrificing, and they had come to expect it. They saw my generosity not as an act of love, but as a given. And when I stopped giving, even for a moment, it was an offense, a betrayal. I felt a profound sorrow for the relationship we had, or rather, the relationship we didn't have. I had always envisioned a close, loving family. Grandchildren visiting every weekend. Holiday dinners filled with laughter, the kind of warmth you see in commercial. Instead, I had a credit history with 2 adult children who only called when they needed money, or complained when they didn't get it. My heart ached, not just for the money I had poured into them, but for the years I had poured into them. The emotional investment, the hopes and dreams I had for their happiness, which had somehow twisted into me, directly funding that happiness. I had enabled their idleness, their irresponsibility, and in doing so, I had lost myself. I had lost the mother they should have had, the one who set boundaries and taught responsibility, instead of the one who just kept writing checks. The airport was the breaking point because it was the moment their indifference became undeniable. Utterly stripped of any excuses or sugarcoating. It was naked neglect, and I could no longer pretend it was anything else. I had to choose myself. Even if it meant shattering the fragile illusion of family I had clung to for so long. The next few days were a blur of escalating chaos. My phone became a hotline for their increasingly desperate calls. Mac's tone swung wildly between aggressive demands and whimpering plea. "Mom, the landlord is threatening eviction. You can't let this happen. We'll lose everything." And then, moments later, "How could you be so heartless? After all we've done for you." What exactly had they done for me, I wondered bitterly. Lisa, ever the tactician, deployed her children. My grandchildren. I loved them fiercely, and she knew it. My phone buzzed with a video call from her. She held the phone low, showing me little Chloe, aged 5, with her big innocent eye. "Grandma," Chloe whispered, her voice barely audible. "Mommy says we might have to move. Is it true? Are you mad at us?" My stomach twisted into knots. This was low, so low, I forced a smile. "No, sweetie, Grandma's not mad at you. Everything will be okay." Lisa's voice, a stage whisper, cut through. "See, Mom. You are scaring the children. This is affecting them. Don't you care about your own grandchildren?" "Lisa," I said, my voice tight with controlled anger, "don't you dare use the children to manipulate me. This is between us. You two are responsible for your own living situation. Not your children, and certainly not me anymore." She scoffed. "Responsible? We work, Mom. We're doing our best. But we can't just magically come up with that kind of money overnight. You know our situation. You put us in this situation." "I put you in this situation?" I repeated, incredulous. "I offered to help you secure a home. You chose one you couldn't afford. You chose to rely on me. You chose to neglect me. You made your choices. Now you live with the consequences." The calls started coming from new numbers. From Mark's girlfriend, Sarah. "Mrs. Miller, please, Mark is beside himself. We don't know what to do. He's always spoken so highly of you, how generous you are. Please don't do this to us." My own name, Sarah, felt like a mockery. Then from Lisa's ex-husband, their children's father, Dave. "Sarah, what's going on with Lisa? She's telling me you are kicking them out of the house. Is this true? My kids are involved here. This is unacceptable." He who barely paid child support was suddenly concerned about their housing. It was a circus of entitlement. I stuck to my guns. My standard reply became a variation of, "I've supported them for years. It's time they supported themselves." The airport incident was the final straw. "This is not up for negotiation." I kept my answers short, firm, and repeated them until they gave up, at least for a little while. But the emotional toll was immense. Every phone call, every text felt like a tiny cut. I found myself checking my phone compulsively, dreading the next notification, yet unable to ignore it. My sleep was disturbed by vivid dreams of them homeless, shivering in the rain, or of me desperately chasing them through endless airport corridors. My logical mind knew I was doing the right thing, setting boundaries, taking back my life. But my heart, the one that had loved them unconditionally for decades, was aching. They started to come to my house. Mark first. He hammered on my front door, yelling my name. "Mom, open up. We need to talk about this. You can't hide from us." I pulled the blinds shut and locked the door. I saw his shadow, pacing outside my window for a long time, before he finally gave up and left. It felt like I was living in a fortress, barricaded against my own children. Then Lisa came, her car pulling up with a screech. She sat in her car in my driveway for an hour, occasionally honking the horn. I watched her from behind my curtains, her face a mask of frustration and anger. When she finally got out, she left a neatly folded note on my doormat. It was filled with accusations. "You are punishing us. You've never loved us. This is about your own control issues." The classic projection. It didn't break me, but it chipped away at my resolve, leaving me feeling raw and exposed. I felt like I was in a war I never wanted to fight, against the very people I had raised. Every argument, every accusation, every guilt trip chipped away at my energy. I was exhausted, not physically, but emotionally drained. My friends called, concerned. I had told a few of my closest friends about the situation, simplifying it to, "My kids are upset because I stopped paying their bills." They were supportive, telling me I was strong, that it was about time, that I deserved to live my own life. But their words felt distant, unable to penetrate the thick wall of pain and anxiety I was living behind. The silence, when it finally came between calls, was deafening. It was the silence of a relationship fraying, tearing at the seams. I could feel the distance growing between us, a chasm widening with every unanswered call, every unread text. And despite the pain, a part of me felt a grim satisfaction. They were finally experiencing a fraction of the emotional neglect they had inflicted on me for years. It was a cold comfort, but it was all I had left. The calm that followed the storm of calls was eerie. A day passed, then two, without a single message from Mark or Lisa. I knew it wasn't surrender. It was something else. A regrouping, a silence that felt heavier than the noise. It was my neighbor Carol who unintentionally dropped the bomb. Carol was a lovely, well-meaning woman who frequented the same local coffee shop as Lisa. One afternoon she stopped me while I was getting my mail. "Sarah, are you feeling better now after your trip? I saw Lisa at the coffee shop a few days ago, and she looked so happy, completely glowing." She was talking about her new venture, something about a wellness retreat she's planning. She said she'd just put down a big deposit on the venue. I guess it was a last-minute thing because she mentioned she had to rearrange some plans for it. The words hit me like a physical blow. A wellness retreat, a big deposit on a venue, a last-minute rearrangement of plans. Pieces of the puzzle, the ones that had been scattered and confusing, suddenly snapped into place with sickening clarity. "What day was this, Carol?" I asked, my voice barely a whisper. "Oh, let me see," Carol mused, tapping her chin. "It was the day you got back. Tuesday, I think." "Yes, definitely Tuesday." She was there with a couple of friends, just beaming. Said it was all systems go for her new business. So exciting. Tuesday. The day I landed. The day they forgot me at the airport. My mind reeled. They hadn't forgotten me. They hadn't mixed up times. They hadn't busy. Lisa had been out celebrating her new business venture, probably with money I had given her for some other supposed emergency. And Mark? If Lisa was out with friends, it's highly probable he was doing something similar. Or simply couldn't be bothered, because he assumed Lisa was handling it. Or because he was also involved in her celebration. The wellness retreat was a grand, expensive idea. Precisely the kind of thing Lisa would throw herself into with my money, while simultaneously neglecting real responsibilities. I felt a cold rage settle deep in my bones. Not just anger, but a profound sense of betrayal that cut through everything. It wasn't an oversight. It was a deliberate, conscious choice. They chose to celebrate a new, frivolous venture over picking up their mother, who was recovering from a painful medical procedure. They prioritized their selfish desires, funded by my generosity, above my very well-being. The thought made me physically ill. All those years, all those sacrifices, all the times, I convinced myself they loved me, despite their actions. I had rationalized every slight, every forgotten birthday, every emergency, only they seemed to have. I had told myself they were just busy, or stressed, or a little irresponsible, but they mean well. But this was different. This was proof that I was nothing more than a resource to be exploited. I walked back into my house, feeling utterly numb. Pain was so sharp it almost felt like an out-of-body experience. The heartbreaking part wasn't just the abandonment, but the true reason behind it. It wasn't just forgetfulness, it was calculated disregard. I sat down at my kitchen table, the same one where I had made the decision to cut them off. The decision felt even more justified now, but it didn't bring satisfaction. It brought a crushing wave of grief. I had spent my life building a family, pouring my heart into my children, and it turned out to be an empty shell. They were strangers, really, just incredibly skilled at pretending to be my loving offspring. I remembered Lisa's tearful calls, her accusations that I was being cruel, that I was threatening to make my grandchildren homeless. All while she was planning some expensive, self-indulgent retreat. The hypocrisy was staggering. The sheer audacity of it. I felt a sudden, desperate urge to confront them, to scream the truth at them, to demand an explanation. But then, what would be the point? They would deny it, deflect, blame me. They always did. They would twist the narrative until I was the villain, and they were the perpetual victims. My throat tightened. Tears welled up, hot and fast, blurring my vision. These weren't tears of anger, but of sorrow. Sorrow for the mother I had been, who had given so much. Sorrow for the children I thought I had, who were nothing like I imagined. Sorrow for the family I had desperately tried to build, which had crumbled into dust. This knowledge, this final piece of the puzzle, didn't make me feel stronger. It made me feel utterly, completely broken. The bond, already stretched thin, had snapped. There was no going back from this. No reconciliation, no forgiveness. Not for this. The wound was too deep, too infected with deceit. I knew what I had to do. I had to face them, not to ask for an explanation, but to lay bare the truth and to finally, definitively sever the ties. It would be the hardest thing I had ever done, but it was necessary. I had to face the reality of what my children truly were, and release myself from the illusion that was destroying me. The confrontation happened 2 days later. I didn't call them. I didn't send a text. I drove straight to their house, my heart a drum against my ribs. I knew they would be home, probably scrambling to figure out the rent. I rang the doorbell. A steady, firm push. Mark answered, his face a mixture of surprise and anger. "Mom, what are you doing here? Are you finally going to be reasonable about this?" "Let me in, Mark," I said, my voice low and steady. We need to talk, all three of us. Lisa appeared behind him, her expression hardening when she saw me. Here is nothing to talk about, Mom. You've made your position clear. You've chosen to abandon us. Oh, I am the one who abandoned you? I stepped inside, not waiting for an invitation. The house, their house, the one I paid for, felt foreign and cold. Let's talk about abandonment, shall we? I turned to Lisa, my gaze unwavering. Tell me, Lisa, how was your wellness retreat planning meeting last Tuesday? The one where you put down a big deposit on the venue. Lisa's face, usually so expressive, went utterly blank. Mark, standing beside her, shifted uncomfortably. A flicker of panic crossed Lisa's eyes. I don't know what you are talking about, Mom. I was just busy. Don't lie to me, Lisa, I said, my voice rising, the years of suppressed anger finally breaking through. My neighbor Carol saw you at the coffee shop. She saw you glowing, talking about your new venture. The same day I was abandoned at the airport, after a week of painful medical procedures. The day you conveniently forgot to pick me up, because you were too busy celebrating your self-indulgent whims, paid for, I might add, by my money. Lisa flushed, her mouth opening and closing. Mark finally spoke, his voice defensive. Mom, that's unfair. She was just excited about something new. It was a coincidence. A coincidence? I laughed, a harsh, brittle sound. You think I am stupid, Mark? You think I haven't seen through your excuses for years? My 60th birthday, spent alone. My fall, when neither of you bothered to check on me. Every single time I needed you, you were busy, or had a mix-up, or forgot. But when you needed money, you were never too busy to call. Never too busy to manipulate. Never too busy to take. I took a step closer to them, my voice shaking with raw emotion. I spent my life giving you everything. I worked myself to the bone. I poured my savings into your lives, into this house, because I wanted you to be happy. I wanted a family. And what did I get in return? Neglect, disrespect, and outright deceit. You didn't forget me at the airport. You chose to abandon me. You chose your own selfish desires over my well-being. That wasn't a mistake. That was a choice. A deliberate, calculated choice. Lisa found her voice finally. You are being dramatic, Mom. It was one time. We're sorry. Why are you always holding things over our heads? You are so controlling. You just want to make us feel guilty. Guilty? I echoed, tears streaming down my face now. I want you to feel an ounce of the pain I've felt. I want you to understand what it means to be truly alone when you should have had family. You want to talk about control. You've controlled me for years with your endless needs, your emotional blackmail, making me feel like a bad mother if I didn't give you everything. Well, no more. This house, I swept my arm around the living room. I paid for the down payment. I paid for the majority of the rent. And you know what? It's not worth it. It's not worth the disrespect. It's not worth the pain. You call me heartless. You want to know what's heartless? It's bleeding your mother dry emotionally and financially, and then leaving her stranded when she needs you most. That's heartless. Fine. If that's how you feel, you want us to be on our own. We'll be on our own. Don't come crawling back to us when you are old and lonely, Mom. We're done taking your money, and we're done with you judging us. Good, I choked out, tears still flowing. 'Cause I am done too. I am done paying. I am done enabling. I am done enabling. I am done hoping you'll change. I am done being used. You have 2 weeks to figure out your rent, or you'll get an eviction notice. And don't expect another penny from me. Ever." Lisa was openly sobbing now, but I knew it was for show, for the impact. "You are ruining our lives, Mom. You are breaking this family." "You broke this family, Lisa," I said, my voice flat, devoid of emotion now. "A long time ago. I just finally stopped pretending it wasn't broken. You two figure out how to pay for your wellness retreats and your new ventures, and your comfortable house yourselves. I am taking back my life." I turned and walked out of the house, the door slamming shut behind me. The silence in my car as I drove away was absolute. The confrontation had been brutal, agonizing, but it was over. The bridge was burned. There was no turning back. And the weight of years of pretending, of sacrificing without return, began to lift, slowly, painfully. The weeks that followed were a strange mixture of raw grief and quiet, unsettling peace. I kept my distance from Mark and Lisa. I ignored their calls, which dwindled from desperate pleas to angry accusations, and then, eventually, to silence. They started texting mutual family members, spinning a narrative of the cruel, unfeeling mother who had abandoned them. I heard snippets through cautious calls from my sister and a few cousins, but I didn't engage. I just stated my truth. I supported them for decades. They neglected me, and I had to put myself first. Most understood, some didn't. I stopped caring. The first palpable sign of the consequences for Mark and Lisa came about 3 weeks after our confrontation. I saw a formal-looking notice taped to their front door. It was a 3-day pay or quit notice from the landlord. I watched from my kitchen window as Mark tore it down, his face a thundercloud. Lisa came out shortly after, looking distraught, pacing the porch with her phone pressed to her ear. I imagined she was calling anyone and everyone for help. Their cars, usually so well maintained, started looking neglected. Mark's truck had a dent in the fender that never got fixed. Lisa's car, the one I had helped her buy, was often parked haphazardly, covered in dust. They looked tired, stressed, and very, very angry. I also noticed changes in their routine. The usual stream of visitors, friends coming and going, slowed to a trickle. The lights in their house, which used to burn late into the night, were often dark by early evening. No more impromptu parties, no more elaborate weekend barbecues. The vibrant, carefree lifestyle I had enabled was clearly unraveling. The rumors started circulating. Mark had lost his part-time job or was fired from it. Lisa's wellness retreat venture had imploded before it even truly began. The large deposit lost. They were scrambling, trying to find new employment, trying to secure loans, trying to sell off some of their more expensive possessions to make ends meet. I saw them occasionally driving around, looking stressed, their faces drawn. They looked like strangers, hollow versions of the people I had raised. It was hard to watch. My stomach would clench every time I saw them. Despite everything, they were still my children. Part of me, the deeply ingrained maternal instinct, wanted to rush over, to fix it, to alleviate their suffering. But another, stronger part, the one that had finally found its voice, held me back. This was their lesson. A painful one, yes, but a necessary one. They had never truly learned how to stand on their own feet. How to be truly responsible, because I had always been there to catch them. One evening, I saw a moving truck pull up to their house. My heart pounded. It was happening. They were truly losing the house. I watched, hidden behind my curtains, as they frantically loaded boxes, their movements uncoordinated, their faces grim. There was no joy, no laughter, only a quiet, desperate efficiency. I saw Lisa cry, wiping tears with the back of her hand. Mark looked defeated, slumping against the truck as he paused for a moment. The process took 2 days. Their expensive furniture, the pieces they had so carefully chosen, were wrapped and loaded. The vibrant potted plants on their porch were withered. The house, once so full of life, became empty, dark, and silent. On the 3rd day, the moving truck was gone. Their cars were gone. The house stood empty, a monument to a life they couldn't sustain, a life I had foolishly bankrolled. A for rent sign went up a few days later. I didn't know where they went, not exactly. I heard they moved into a smaller, cheaper apartment on the other side of town. The grandchildren, Chloe and Leo, were now living in cramped conditions, sharing a bedroom. I heard that through David, Lisa's ex-husband, who called me in a rare moment of concern, mostly for his kids. He was angry at Lisa, but also at me, for not continuing to support them. Told him gently but firmly that his children's welfare was his and Lisa's responsibility. My support had been a gift, not an obligation. The sight of their empty house brought a profound sadness, a heavy weight in my chest. This wasn't victory. It wasn't triumph. It was the crushing reality of what happens when love is conditional, when boundaries are never set, and when self-worth is tied to financial output. I had wanted them to learn responsibility, but I also hadn't wanted them to truly suffer. Yet, here they were, suffering, and I was the one who, by finally choosing myself, had initiated it. The silence from their side continued. No more angry calls, no more manipulative texts, just absence. They were out of my life physically, at least for now, and I was left with the wreckage of a relationship, the ghosts of past hopes, and the quiet, unnerving reality of a future I hadn't anticipated, one without my children. The initial emptiness after their departure was suffocating. Their house across the street, once a symbol of my misguided generosity, was now a hollow shell. The silence from their side was louder than any of their previous screening matches. It was the silence of a severance, a clean cut, painful but final. I had effectively lost my children, not to death, but to their own choices and my ultimate boundary. The grief that settled over me was profound, a raw, aching sorrow that had no easy outlet. I mourned the family I had always dreamed of, the one where my children loved me for who I was, not for what I provided. I mourned the years I had wasted, the emotional energy I had poured into a bottomless pit. My friends were wonderful. Carol, my neighbor, stopped by often, with fresh-baked goods and quiet companionship. She didn't pry, she just was there, a solid presence. My sister called daily, offering a listening ear and reminding me that I had done nothing wrong. "You gave them more than any mother should have to," she'd say. It was time they stood on their own feet. But their validation, while appreciated, couldn't fill the void. I walked through my quiet house, the house that now felt truly mine for the first time in years, and felt a strange mix of liberation and profound loneliness. No more demands for money, no more anxiety about their latest crisis. No more feeling like an unappreciated ATM. But also, no more casual check-ins, no more random, albeit rare, visits, no more connection, however superficial. I had to acknowledge the truth. My decision, while necessary for my own well-being, had cost me the fragile connection I still had with them, and that hurt more than I ever anticipated. It felt like a part of me had been amputated. The mother in me, the one who had nurtured and protected, felt lost and adrift. I found myself crying at unexpected times, while making a cup of tea, while watching a family movie on television, while watering my garden. The tears weren't for self-pity, but for the profound loss. The loss of a dream, the loss of a future I had always imagined. Grandchildren laughing in my home, holiday dinners, a sense of belonging in their lives, all gone. But slowly, painstakingly, I began to heal. I started doing things I had put off for years. I joined a book club. I took up painting again, a hobby I had abandoned when their demands consumed all my free time. I reconnected with old friends, ones who had drifted away, because my life had become so centered around my children's problems. I started taking long walks in the park, enjoying the quiet beauty of nature. I even booked a trip for myself, not a medical trip, not a trip for them, but a proper vacation to a place I had always dreamed of visiting. As I planned it, I realized something profound. For the first time in a very long time, my decisions were solely about me. My money was for me. My time was for me. My peace was paramount. The loneliness was still there, a dull ache beneath the surface, but it was a different kind of loneliness. It wasn't the loneliness of being abandoned, of being forgotten. It was the quiet solitude of a woman finding her own path, rebuilding her life, piece by painful piece. It was the loneliness that comes with freedom, with independence, with standing on your own 2 feet, even if those feet felt shaky at times. I learned to sit with my grief, to acknowledge it without letting it consume me. I talked to a therapist, someone who helped me unpack years of enabling behavior and the deep-seated fears that fueled. She helped me understand that I wasn't just a victim. I had played a role in the dynamic, however unintentional, and that understanding, while painful, was also liberating. It gave me agency. It meant I could change. I started taking better care of myself. I ate healthier, exercised more, and prioritized my sleep. Chronic stress I had lived under for decades began to subside. My body, which had been so weary from the medical procedures, started to feel lighter, more energetic. The idea of ever reconciling with Mark and Lisa seemed distant, almost impossible. The wound was too fresh, the betrayal too deep. I didn't hate them. I felt a profound sadness for them, for the choices they made, for the people they had become. But I also knew, with a certainty that settled deep in my core, that I could not go back to being their enabler. I could not allow them to drag me down again. My peace, my sanity, my future depended on this new, harder path. Months turned into a year. The empty house across the street was eventually rented by a young couple, with 2 small children. The laughter, the sounds of their lives, slowly filled the void left by Mark and Lisa. It was a gentle, healing sound. I found myself smiling as I watched the new family, a soft ache in my chest, but also a genuine happiness for them. Their presence helped me realize that life moves on, that new chapters begin, even after profound loss. I completed my trip, the one I planned for myself. It was everything I had dreamed of, and more. For the first time, I felt truly unburdened. I could enjoy every moment without the shadow of their demands, or my guilt hanging over me. I sent postcards to Carol and my sister, but not to Mark or Lisa. There was no need. My relationship with my grandchildren was a more complex matter. Lisa, furious, had initially blocked me from contacting them. But David, their father, eventually reached out. He had seen the difficulties Lisa was experiencing without my financial support. He'd also observed how her anger and resentment consumed her. He allowed me to have video calls with Chloe and Leo, supervised at first, then more freely. It was cautious, tentative, but a small thread of connection remained. They were still so young, and I hoped that in time, when they were older, they would understand more. I loved them, and I wouldn't give up on that connection, even if it meant navigating the complexities of their parents' unresolved issues. I still thought of Mark and Lisa, sometimes daily, sometimes weekly. The memories weren't always painful. Sometimes I'd remember a happy moment from their childhood, a time when things were simpler, when our love felt uncomplicated. Those memories brought a bittersweet pang, a reminder of what was lost, but also a quiet acceptance. I understood now that love, true love, couldn't be bought. It had to be earned, cherished, and reciprocated. My love for them had been unconditional, but their actions had shown me that their love for me was anything but. And that was a truth I had to live with. It wasn't about blame anymore, but about understanding. Understanding my own role, their choices, and the inevitable consequences. I had learned that setting boundaries, however painful, was an act of self-love, not cruelty. It was a declaration that my worth was not tied to my ability to provide, but to my inherent value as a person. I was not just a mother. I was Sarah. And Sarah deserved peace, respect, and a life lived on her own terms. My future was still unwritten, but it felt open now, full of possibility. I volunteered at a local animal shelter, finding joy in nurturing creatures who offered unconditional affection. I explored new interests, met new people, built new connections that were based on mutual respect and genuine care, not financial dependency. There was no grand reconciliation, no tearful apologies from Mark or Lisa, no sudden epiphany on their part, and I had stopped expecting it. That was another part of the healing, letting go of the expectation that they would ever truly see their actions for what they were. My peace could not depend on their change of heart. It had to come from within me. I learned to appreciate the quiet of my home, the warmth of a good book, the laughter of new friends. My scars from the experience were real, but they weren't debilitating. They were a reminder of a difficult journey, a lesson learned, and a strength I never knew I possessed. The airport abandonment had been the catalyst, the final straw that broke years of quiet suffering. And the forgotten rent was the declaration of my independence. It wasn't a choice I made lightly, nor was it without immense pain. But it was the right choice. It was the choice that saved me. And as I looked out at the world, ready for whatever came next, I knew, with absolute certainty, that I was finally, truly free. My heart was still healing, but it was whole again, beating to its own rhythm, no longer bound by the chains of a one-sided love. I was moving forward, one step at a time, into a future that was finally truly my own.